Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast, brought to you by Violet Defense. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense for sponsoring the Educational AD Podcast. The Educational AD Podcast would also like to thank Varsity Brands, featuring BSN, Varsity Spirit, and Herff Jones. Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing. Hometown Ticketing helps thousands of schools across the country seamlessly provide convenient digital ticketing options for their communities, families, and fans. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. The Educational AD also wants to thank Ephesus Lighting, Booster Digital Displays, Camp Mobile, Vital Signs, and Gipper. Thanks to all of these great sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Priscilla Russ. Priscilla is the athletic director at the Wilkinson County School District in Woodville, Mississippi. And this marks our first visit ever to the state of Mississippi. Priscilla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to us jumping right in and me sharing my AD journey with the rest of the world.
Oh, wow. Well, again, we really appreciate you being on the program. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to high school and college? And maybe how'd your love of sports get you into this world of athletic administration?
Oh, well, I was born in Macomb, Mississippi. I was raised in a small town called Gloucester, Mississippi. It's in Amite County, and in 1983 is when they closed Gloucester High School and they consolidated Gloucester High School to Amite County High. So in 1983, we moved from Gloucester to Liberty, and that's where I reside now. I graduated from Amite County and with the class of 1997. I was supposed to graduate with the class of 98, but at that time they were doing some college credit classes that allowed us to graduate early. So I jumped on board with that because I only needed 3 classes. And my parents figured it was no way that, as educated as I was, to come back for 3 classes my senior year. So I took double English. I took double social studies, and all having to write the technical report, which I did on Michael Jordan and then his sports era because he was big during the 90s and things like that. And he really inspired me to really continue with the love of sports because, he was cut when he first tried out, but that didn't stop him. So my love of sports came when I was about 10. My father, we played Dixie Youth Baseball. And when we moved to Liberty, our yard was big enough for us to actually have a baseball field in our yard. So, so that's where I got started with the love of baseball. I was the only girl on the team for 1 year, and after that year, my father said, "Oh no, we're gonna cut that off, and then you become the scorekeeper." So I learned how to become the scorekeeper at 11, and so that kind of got me interested more and more into sports. In high school, I was a triathlete. I played softball, basketball, and ran track. My senior year, I received a scholarship to Southwest Community College as a that summer. So I went to Southwest that summer and played on the softball team that summer. And in the fall, I went to Southwest. And then in January, I transferred to Alcorn State University, and I walked on the softball team at Alcorn, and then eventually ended up receiving a full scholarship to the softball program at Alcorn. So making the transition from slow pitch to fast pitch, it was a challenge to say the least. And I became the catcher at Alcorn. I, became my senior year, became MVP, and it was it was a struggle in the beginning trying to balance, being on your own and doing your grades and all the training and everything we had to do for athletics. So that became a huge adjustment for me. But my parents were always in my corner. They were supporting me. My dad never missed a home game in 4 years. He was there at every home game, rooting for me in the stands, even all through high school. Him and my mom, they were there in the stands, rooting for me. My dad came to every away game in high school, whether it was softball, basketball, track. He was, I could always look up in the stands and see him in the stands, cheering me on. He was my biggest supporter growing up and in high school. So, I was glad that he continued that on when I got to college. Um, I graduated Alcorn in 2002 with a degree in health science. And after I graduated, I transferred to the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson to pursue phlebotomy. And, I wasn't really focused to continue that part because it's really intense. So I kind of backed out of that and then came back to Alcorn and got my master's degree in teaching. And I got into teaching. My first teaching assignment was Head Start. So I got into Head Start and I quickly rose up the Head Start ladder, becoming a teacher, first I was an assistant, then I became a teacher, and then I eventually became a center director where I had about 140 kids and about 14 teachers that I was over. So I did that for a spell. And then there was an opportunity for me to become a second grade teacher. So in January, I left the Head Start era to become a second grade teacher. I was like their fourth second grade teacher. So I kind of dove in head first, and I loved the little kids. And then the next year I taught sixth grade, and then I taught ninth grade. So I've been from anywhere from third, second, all the way up to ninth. So I really have a passion for students. So to see them blossom and grow into young adults, and most of them come back, and it's the thank yous that I get for molding their lives to help them become better citizens and better people in the community. I was actually on the coast during Katrina. So that was really an eye opener for me because growing up in Liberty, Gloucester, we don't have hurricanes, and to see the devastation that was caused by Katrina and having to evacuate my home, it was really scary, just to be able to, then come back to find our home wasn't damaged. We had some water damage, but it really wasn't like most homes that were on the coast that were really, really just damaged and inhabitable. So that was a plus for us. And then the following year, I moved back home because there was an opening in Gloucester, Mississippi at Gloucester Elementary School. So I came back home and taught fourth grade. And then the following year, they closed Gloucester Elementary, and I had to make the transition to Amite County Elementary. So I made the transition to Amite County Elementary. And then one of my friends called me and say, well, hey, we have an opening in Wilkinson County. So, it's kind of an unwritten rule, when you're Amite County, you don't take a job in your rival district. So Amite County and Wilkinson County, it's a big rivalry. So I made the transition to Wilkinson County and, to make a name for myself, because in Amite County, everybody knew me because both of my parents were in the educational system. So my dad was vocational director. My mom was a teacher. So I basically left Amite County to make a name for myself in Wilkinson County to say, hey, I can do this on my own without my name per se. So I got to Wilkinson County. I taught elementary, and then I went to middle school and taught 1 year at the middle school. While at the middle school, I was back in school to receive my master's degree. So it was a tough challenge, being an educator during the day, going to class at night, but I made it by the grace of God. I made it. And so also that year, the following year, I kind of got involved with technology, with the technology portion of athletics. I ran the timing system for track. I took scores, and I did the basketball clock and things like that. So that's how I kind of got into athletics in Wilkinson County. Then the following year in Wilkinson County, I became middle school girls basketball coach. Whew, girls are tough, because they really have no foundation in basketball. So if you want to become a middle school girls coach, you have to have that dedication, because those girls, they don't know anything about basketball. So you really have to start from scratch and put your all in all into it to get them to love the game, and then continue once they go to high school, because once they go to high school, boys come into play. So you really have to build that foundation in middle school to get them to love the game of basketball. And so the following year, I made the transition to the boys. So now instead of teaching girls, I was now the boys middle school basketball coach. So we did very well that year. And right now I'm still coaching middle school boys. So yes, it's tough being a woman coaching young men, because you have to teach them to respect a woman that's in authority. Guys, they're rough around the edges. They play ball all the time, and you have to change their street ball mentality to a team ball situation. So I love what I do, being the middle school coach. And then there was an opportunity before I became AD. I wanted to become the assistant athletic director. So when the time came for me to transition to the athletic director position, I would have a little training and things like that. But God came into play when I wanted to become the assistant. The AD left, so that threw me right into the athletic director spectrum, and I've enjoyed my ride ever since then. It's been 3 years since I became athletic director in Wilkinson County, and I love being around the student athletes. I love, seeing their progression from middle school to high school, and ultimately seeing them sign those scholarships on the dotted line. There's no greater love for me than seeing these students extend their educational journey to college, JUCO, and a lot of them come back and they give to the athletic program. So, which is a good thing for us being a small 3A school. So it's good for those students to come back and share their stories with our student athletes. And I have a great coaching staff there at Wilkinson County. They connect with various um, big athletes. We had a visit from Kansas City Chiefs. We had uh, Ward. Ward came down and visited our football team and gave a great motivational speech to our student athletes, which really got them pumped for the year. So that has really carried over. And our coaches are working hard to get those students ready for the upcoming season. With COVID-19, it really changes a lot of mindsets in the way you're going into your season, because now you have a different avenue to make sure that your students athletes are protected. Number one is they are protected and they don't carry COVID-19 back to their families, back to their younger siblings. So now that plays a part in the back of my mind. How can I continue to keep those athletes and their families safe? Some may not like the fact that we can't have you in the gym this game because of COVID, but we still do our best to have those games broadcasted so they can watch, their student athlete perform. But I know it's taxing on parents when they can't physically be in the gym to cheer their child on, because I know how it would feel if my dad couldn't be there to cheer me on when I was in high school. And Unfortunately, last year I lost my dad in December to COVID. So I still remember, the things that he taught me growing up, and I have to stick to those values because at the end of the day, my thing is I have to make him proud. I know he's watching me, and still, he talks to me. It's funny because I had a little situation, and I walked into the office and the papers and things start flying on the wall, and everybody was like, "Miss Russ, tell your daddy you are okay." So, I said, "Dad, I'm okay." And then instantly all the papers stopped flying. They was like, "Man, that's creepy. That is so creepy." But, um, I still carry him with me daily. I carry his work badge behind my work badge, and I have his picture riding with me in the car. Just as that extra added up protection that I know, he's there walking this journey with me, but he may not be there physically, but he's there spiritually walking and continually guiding me. My mom, she is still she part times in the educational system, so we work at the same school. So it's great to have her still there, that I can go to if I need any questions with far as in the classroom. And I teach technology, which is the class that she retired in, ironically. So now I'm teaching the class she retired in. So it's a great deal. My superintendent, Mr. Chavis L. Bradford, he's very supportive of athletics. He's been a great mentor to me, and so I kind of understand, where he wants me to be in my educational career. He guides me, he gives me guidance. He was there for me, when my father died. And so it's just great to see the family variation that we have in Wilkinson County. We are truly one big family there in Wilkinson County. Once you're an outsider and you come in and you get that camaraderie and that niche within them, they truly look out for you. So I've been blessed so far in this educational journey. And we're looking to do great things in Wilkinson County. We're looking to show the world, hey, this is our small corner of the world, and great things are happening in Wilkinson County.
I just love to hear all these stories. They're just so cool. And I find myself thinking about the connections and similarities. My first coaching experience was with, middle school girls. And you're right. It is different from boys. Just
It's a
great
big
stuff.
difference.
Um, quick question. We, we always talk about in our profession the importance of leadership and mentorship. And one of the questions I ask our ADs is, who are some of the mentors in your life? I'm going to guess, your dad was certainly one of them, along with your mom, who's, certainly part of the profession. Who are some of your other mentors, either coaches or maybe people that you've worked with? The expression I like to use is I still hear those voices in my head when I'm working with a kid or a coach or a parent. So besides your dad, whose voice do you still hear?
I still hear his voice. And then I had a college coach at Alcorn called Mr. Lewis Jones. And his philosophy was kill a gnat with a sledgehammer. So I mean, I still hear that in the back of my mind. When times get tough, he was always be like, "You got to kill a gnat with a sledgehammer." And it's still good that he's still around, and I can still call him. When times get tough, and that bond that we have is a special bond. Because once you graduate from college, there are not many college coaches that will continue to check on you throughout your life to see really how things are going in your life. So I really appreciate Coach Jones and all the lessons that he has taught me on the college level. And then in high school, I had a coach named Ernest Dunlap. And Ernest Dunlap, he was a special guy. Him and my dad, they were best friends. And Coach Dunlap, he would be always say, if you can't do your all, don't do it at all. So he kind of pushed us to make sure that we were at the top of our game, whether it was in life or whether it was on the athletic court. And then I had a coach named Coach Charlie Floyd. Coach Floyd actually hired me in Wilkinson County. He was on the school board when I put my application in. So Coach Floyd is still around. He still gives me, me advice when I see him here and there. He was in Amy County. We were state champions in track. So he really gave me some great advice. It's always about putting your student athletes first and making sure that they are where they need to be, where they need to be, when they need to be. If they need help in a class, you are the one that they have to sit down and talk to you and say, hey, I need help with the class. So I always at the beginning of the year tell the student athletes, if you need me, my door is open. Don't wait to the end where I can't help you. So if you're running into a problem midway during the year, pull me to the side and say, hey, coach, I'm having a problem with such and such class. And, we try to work with the teachers and work with the students so they can go on in life. So this year, we've instituted weekly progress reports with our student athletes to kind of help them so they can see if they're falling in some areas and they can say, hey, I got to work a little harder in this class, or hey, coach, I need help in this class. I try to teach all the coaches, hey, be approachable. We never know what these student athletes are going through in life. Sometimes their problems are bigger than the problems we have. So I always instill be approachable, do what you can do to make sure that these students are successful on and off the field. At the end of the day, yes, we all want to win, but winning in life is more important than winning on the field.
Absolutely. Glad to hear you doing that type of program. For listeners, we are visiting with Priscilla Russ, who's the athletic director at the Wilkinson County School District in Woodville, Mississippi. We're going to come back, but now we're going to hear from our podcast sponsor, Violet Defense. Once again, we want to thank Violet Defense for sponsoring the Educational AD podcast. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense for sponsoring the Educational AD podcast. We're back with Priscilla Russ, athletic director at the Wilkinson County School District in Woodville, Mississippi. Priscilla, one of the things we like to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So you already talked to us about the progress reports, which you do with your students. What are some other things that you've done at your school with your coaches and your kids that you're particularly proud of?
One thing we've done this year with our high school football team, we have a youth football league that's in our area. So this year we met with our youth coaches and created like a feeder program for our young athletes and our high school athletes. They serve as mentors to those young athletes who are who are 6 years old, who are just getting into football. So we shared our rules with the coaches so they can incorporate the same rules with their young team. So once they leave that youth football realm and transfer over to our middle school, the program is seamless. So that's one of the things that we've worked hard this year to incorporate with our youth football league, because we're trying to save our youth. Because in Wilkinson County, there are not a lot of activities for our youth to do. So our youth football league is one of those activities, and we want to harness those youth and keep them into sports, because eventually, ultimately, sports may save someone's life. So that's our big thing, is getting those youth and our high school players together so they can talk about certain things. Sometimes youth can't talk to their parents, but hey, I got a big brother I can talk to about certain things. So that was near and dear to my heart because my nephew is now 6, so he is signed up for the youth football league. So I got involved with the youth football league, because of him, because I want to see what it entails. So, I'll be there on the sidelines with the youth football league and just, making sure that our high school players are there supporting these youth, because ultimately it is about giving back to our youth and making sure that our youth are protected. And also what we do is, I know at the middle school, we have movie night. So we go out to watch a movie, of their choice. We take them to basketball games. It's just building a sense of teamwork and a sense of trust, because with middle school students, the trust is not always there because they are just getting started. So not so much as at the high school level, because they've all been playing since they started their middle school journey. But middle school, for my future coaches, ADs, you have to put a lot of time in your middle school, because to me, that's where your foundation lies, is with your middle school students and getting those students to love playing sports, and so they can continue on. So it won't be so hard for the high school coaches to have to go back and teach blocking, teach proper shooting techniques. That foundation in middle school is so important. So I try to put a lot of emphasis on our middle school students and getting them to work together as a team, getting them to trust one another, getting them to develop proper fundamentals. So a lot of our coaches, we work hand in hand together. All of our middle school football boys, they play basketball to keep in shape for the upcoming season. And then, when spring comes, they work out with the high school students. So we're just kind of trying to build on the family aspect, because, like I said before, family is big for everyone, because at the end of the day, students, if they can't talk to their parents, they have to talk to somebody. I tell them all the time, if you're going through something, don't hold it in to where it gets to the point where you're exploding on the field, off the field. You have this anger with you. So before we get to that point, let's talk about whatever is going on in your life so we can help you get out of that situation and try to get you in a better situation. We're also going to start our Fellowship of Christian Athletes this year. I have 2 great pastors who are going to spearhead our Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We have a pastor on we were blessed to get a pastor on our coaching staff this year at the high school. So he will be handling the high school aspect. And then I have a great youth pastor who's going to be handling our middle school aspect. So we're just trying to get our children exposed to different aspects and let them know, hey, just trust us. We're not going to lead you astray. So, I have an athlete now who's battling, trying to decide whether they want to play sports or not, because their grandmother was their sounding ear. Grandma asked them to play sports, they would play sports. So grandma died this summer. So mom called me, was like, well, Miss Russ, can you talk to him to see if you can get him to participate in sports? So I called and listened to him. He cried, and I told him, I said, the way you honor your grandma is get back out there. Get back out there and participate in sports. I have high school athletes now. Miss Rush, you coming to the game, right? Yeah, I'm gonna be there. I had them when they were in middle school, so they still look for me in the stands, or on the sidelines, or after the game. They'll call, Miss Rush, how did I do? How did I do? Did you see this play? So I have to be very attentive, while I'm at the game, because they're gonna ask, was I there? Even if it's 50 miles away, I still, I'm still there to support them no matter what they do. I tell them all the time, even in life, when life gets you down, you still have to get back up. The biggest part in life is if you fall, get back up, don't stay down.
There we go. I love the idea. Gonna try that again. There we go. I love the idea of reaching out to the middle school kids and making those connections, not just as you talked about technique wise, but also those life connections, with the coaches that they're going to see down the road. Successful programs, big school, small school. I think they always have that program approach where the kids coming in as freshmen, they've been taught those fundamentals that you spoke of at the middle school level, boys and girls. Great stuff. Well, Priscilla, this time has flown by, but we still have a couple segments we want to get to. One question that I've been asking the athletic directors I've met with during the last year revolves around this issue of, social awareness and social justice. And my question is this: what are some things that we can do as athletic administrators? What are some things that we can do better regarding being socially aware for our kids in our communities? You got something you can, share with us quickly?
What I do for my student athletes, I make sure they share their Twitter handles. If they have Facebook, they share with me their Facebook handles. And what I try to do is monitor those things very closely, because I know that one post, one tweet sometimes can destroy you. So I try to make sure that there's nothing out there that would deter them from getting a scholarship that's on their Twitter handle. I have outsiders who watch their Twitter handles, who watch their Facebook and things like that. So, and then I have college coaches come in, to talk to them, be like, hey, this is one thing that we're monitoring. So you might want to be aware of what you are posting, what you are tweeting. When Facebook first came out, my dad sent me a friend request. I'm like, I'm not accepting that friend request. Oh no. So he would bug me every day. Did you get my friend request? Did you get my friend request? So finally I accepted the friend request. And that was one of the greatest things that I did, because, by him watching my Facebook page and things that I would post, he made me aware, your job is watching your Facebook post. So I did a post, and ultimately I shared this with my kids. That post didn't get me a job. Even though I shared what somebody else wrote, and ultimately that share lost me a job. So I always share that with my kids and be like, hey, just be conscientious of what you post. Your mom or dad, if they're getting on you about what you post, it's not all bad. Because they see things from a different perspective other than what you type out on the screen. So we try to monitor that very closely and talk to the students constantly about their image, what they do out when they're not with us, because you never know who's watching you.
Oh, absolutely. What a great idea. I've heard coaches talk about not using social media or telling their students, not to use it, which I just don't think is realistic. So, being able to monitor it and kind of help them understand that what they post out there does have an impact. Well, Priscilla, again, this has just been great getting to know you a little bit, but we're not done yet. We
All
always like to
right.
wrap up with what we call the new athletic director's toolbox. So you certainly got a strong background in sports as a participant, as a coach, and now as an athletic director. But what I'm going to do is challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in Priscilla Russ's athletic director toolbox?
Number one, get you a calendar, because those dates, times, meetings, they will sneak up on you. So get you a calendar, get organized. Number two, find you someone to talk to, because sometimes our ideas, we have to bounce them off others. So get you someone to talk to, so your ideas can kind of bounce off each other and you're not out there trying to make decisions on your own. Final thing for a new athletic director, I would say develop relationships, because you can't make changes and run a program all on your own. Develop relationships with your coaches, with your parents, with your student athletes, because at the end of the day, those relationships will carry you in the long run. So those would be three things that I would share with new athletic directors. And then if there's a mentor, an older athletic director that you can become friends with, I would advise you to pick their brains. Ask them questions, so you were not making split decisions that would hurt our athletic programs. We always want to build on programs, so I would find an older athletic director who's been in the game for a little while and become their friend. Ask them, would they mentor you, and just pick their brains, because they've been through situations that we haven't even scratched the surface of going through. So those are some things that I would advise new athletic directors to do, because it's a horse of a different color when you step into an administrative role, because you have to change your mindset, and we have to change the way we talk to people. You can't approach everybody the same, so you have to have some compassion for others, and that's just one of the biggest things I've learned as being an athletic director, is being compassionate and having passion for what you do. At the end of the day, we all want to have our name in the lights, but ultimately, what have you done? What is going to be your legacy when you step down from being an athletic director? Are you going to have a positive legacy, or will that legacy be negative? My goal is to have a positive legacy and touch as many student athletes' lives as I possibly can.
Great advice. Get a calendar, be organized, find that mentor, and establish those relationships. Very cool stuff. Priscilla, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
I have emails, which is at pruss@wilkinsonk12.org. I have Facebook, Priscilla Russ. That's my Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. If they send me an email, I'll reach back out to them. If they need my personal contact information to pick my brain, I sure will get back with them, because, that's how I started. It's picking someone else's brain, talking to other people and say, hey, I'm thinking about becoming an athletic director. So, I was fortunate. I have a cousin who is at Alcorn, who is the compliance officer. So I get a lot of things from him. And he told me that, you never can have too much education when it comes to athletics. So my next venture is to become NCAA certified compliance. So, and I'm also going to be working on getting my PhD. So those are things that I'm striving for. So to young athletes, never settle. Continue to strive to be the best that you can be. And when you fall down, sometimes you will, it's always important to get back up. Make sure your directors, your superintendents, your board members, you win them over, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're going to have to support you as well. So it's always important to build those relationships. I'm big on building relationships, because you can't do it by yourself. There's no way that you can change a mindset of a program on your own. You will go crazy. So build relationships. That's my key thing, is building those relationships and bringing families, communities, towns together, because sports sometimes is the glue that holds everything together. So without those relationships, I mean, my gosh, I don't know where I would be without relationships with our school board, with our superintendent, with our principals, just having those weekly meetings with those people and telling them, hey, this is what we're doing in athletics. It kind of have everybody on the same page. We hold quarterly coaches meetings. So, coaches can give us give me what their upcoming plan is. If they run into a snag, they know, hey, they can call me, they can text me. My office is open for them because, my job is to essentially make their job easier. So I tell them, give me what I can do to make your job easier. So you got to be approachable. So those are just some things, I love. But once again, my email is pruss@wilkinsonkk12.org. If anybody wants to pick my brain, please reach out. I'm all about, building athletic directors, because you never know who may need who. So just reach out. I'll be glad to talk to anybody on their athletic journey.
No, I appreciate you sharing. And again, you and I connected through the NIAAA portal. So the information's out there too. Priscilla Russ, Wilkinson County School District. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. If I can help you any way, do another podcast, let me know. This has been a nice educational journey for me as far as being in the school system and being an athletic director.
No, well, we loved having you on, and we appreciate you being the one to be our first visit to Mississippi. For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews are being uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Thanks for listening. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD.